Well, today, welcome to Slightly Ways North, and our next guest is somebody that, if you're Canadian, needs no introduction, Steve Smith, better known as Red Green, and many other shows as well, but Red Green is probably what most of our viewers are going to have pop to the top of their head, I should say, and so he needs no introduction, so we won't. Will you please welcome Steve Smith? Steve, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, Corey.
So before we get into it, what are you up to these days?
5'8". No, really. I'm actually doing a podcast with my son. It's been 20 years since I did Red Green Show, and I did nothing for a while. Then I started writing books, and then I toured for probably 8 years, one-man shows. Then when that finished, I wasn't done yet. I still have some creative juice, I think. So I just started doing a podcast with my son inside the Red Green world, the Red Green character done from Possum Lodge and so on. And I used several of the guys from the TV show as well. So I've been doing that we're in our fifth or sixth season now. And now we're trying to switch over and do an animated version of the podcast. So it's still got things going on for an old guy.
That'd be great. I'll make sure that I put a graphic plug on it so that people can go and check that out. But if people want to check out the podcast, where can they go and see it?
It's called the Possum Lodge Podcast. I think if you just Google that, it'll pop up wherever it comes up.
I'll definitely make sure we have a link to that, and also the cool merchandise that is available on redgreen.com. So if we go back a little bit, I think, well, this is selfishly what I want. If you hear meowing in the background, and by the way, it's a pet-friendly studio. I have a Siamese, so she might jump up and decide to provide some running commentary. So I apologize in advance, but she seems to be a rating straw. So what I was going to ask you is, if we go back right to the beginning, when you first started going into television, if we go back, like I say, to the very, very beginning, how did you get involved in television from the very, very start? Like Smith & Smith, CHCH, how did that come about? And even before, like just getting into this business in Canada and I guess in Hamilton?
Yeah, well, what happened was my wife and I were an act. I was writing all the material, and we weren't getting a lot of work, to be honest with you. But we ended up got an opportunity to open for an Italian crooner named Al Martino, and we went across Canada opening for him. And one of the places we performed at was in Hamilton, at Hamilton Place. So when we finished that tour, we got back, and my wife said to me, "You know what we need to do? We need to have a television show." And I said, "Sure, count me in." And so she said, we lived in Hamilton. We should start here in Hamilton. If we don't get a show in Hamilton, we'll go wherever we have to go to get a TV show. Okay. So I find out the general manager's name at CHCH was Frank DeNardis. So I start phoning him. And I phone him every day for, 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. And I got kind of fed up with it. So I'm sitting at the breakfast table, and she said to me, "Have you phoned Mr. DeNardis today?" I said, "No." She says, "Well, we need to phone him today." And I said, "Well, go ahead, help yourself." So she went to the bedroom, came out 5 minutes later and says, "We have a meeting Tuesday." So then we went in there and met Frank DeNardis, who instantly became a great friend. And he started the meeting by saying, "I want you to know, I was in the audience when you opened for Al Martino at Hamilton Place. And if I don't give you a television show, somebody else is going to. So why don't we just start here?" And away we went.
That's amazing. So I guess it was Morag that ended up finally getting the GM and getting the meeting going.
She's the mover and shaker. I'm just the shaker.
That's fantastic. What was the first show you guys did? Was it Smith & Smith, or did you have other ones before on CHCH?
No, the Smith & Smith, because that was our stage act with Smith & Smith, and we would write these little, satirical songs, and that It was kind of, I think the Smith and Smith thing really probably was like a Canadian Sonny and Cher, you know.
Yeah.
She was a good looking singer. I was the goofy guy, you know.
Mm-hmm. So did they get it going pretty quickly? I guess it would have been, when did Smith and Smith start? Was it like 78 or something like that?
We did the pilot in 76 and
76.
Yeah, but they could tell in the pilot that she was expecting. We didn't think it was that obvious, but they knew. So they said, okay, we're going to pick up the series, but we'll wait till after the baby's born. So then our son was born in July of 77, and the series started in 78. Well, during the first season of the show, she was expecting again with our second son.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and they said, okay, we're going to pick up the show for another season, but keep him away from her.
Well, it's interesting just because 76, that would have been, I guess, just a little bit before Telefilm Canada funding.
Yeah, there was no telephone, but the Canadian stations had a requirement to provide a certain amount of Canadian content, and
that was a huge amount.
Yeah, and that it was killing them. This guy, Frank Denardis, who became a really good friend, he said to me, you know, he says, I'm going to tell you this because you can take it. But he said, every Canadian TV station wants to operate with three people. One guy to buy the American shows, a second guy to sell ads for the American shows, and a third guy to push the button somewhere so the American shows go on the air.
Yeah, pretty much. That's
yeah. So like, and where do you see yourself fitting in there? You know.
Yeah, not a lot has changed in that regard, at least in terms of the sentiment. But I mean, thank God for the, I think it was quite a bit. It was like 50, 60 hours. So all the stations up until probably the early 1990s, even, it was like CJOH where I was, and all of them. Yeah. It was like one minute you'd have a soap, and then another minute you'd have a variety show, and then another minute and you had no idea what show you were going to get because you just had to fill those hours. And I think this is something a lot of people don't understand. And you could keep the rights to your masters in a lot of cases because they just wanted the content. They didn't care. They wanted good content, but
in fairness, you know, they needed a legitimate reason to be in business. Like, I don't think it was their job to be supplying American shows to us. We can get them ourselves. We don't need a Canadian broadcaster to bring us American TV. Thank you very much. So, you know, that other than the news, I mean, they liked the news, and the news got ratings because people still want to know what's going on locally, you know. But other than that, entertainment programming, you know, naturally they weren't doing any because they didn't have to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it was kind of fun to kind of have, because you'd have like a list of shows and that sort of thing that would just run. How did you find, like, when you got the okay for Smith and Smith, how fast did it wind up coming together? Like, did you find much of a shift for the process? Just having multicam and that, or was it multicam, or was it sort of one cam and edited? I'm guessing it was multicam, but.
Well, not only was it multicam, there was no editing. Everything was live to tape. We would do the skits and so on. We pre-record those. And then when we put an episode together, everything went live. Like, they would roll tape to roll in a clip, and that would be recorded onto the second machine. But when at half an hour later, we had a half-hour show in the can. It was very, no editing, no post-production, had to be quick and dirty. And I liked that because it made it a challenge. You know, I like trying to do things efficiently. That's just makes it more interesting for me.
Yeah, and then just, I guess you would have had a bunch of sketches and everything, I imagine, was fairly well timed out. You had a fairly good idea of how long they were going to run, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we always had an ad lib section in the show, which was our way of bringing it to time. So we would know that this section needs to be 2 minutes and 12 seconds long, and that's what we would do. So
moving and essentially going right into the frying pan for television, did anything stick out at you? Just learned from doing television? Because it sounds like you had a pretty well-oiled machine from the very get-go.
Yeah, I was very motivated to make this work. We had started in the music business. 1971 was the last time I had an actual job, and we were in a band, and that really was proven to me that didn't go anywhere. And somewhere along the line, I read a book that really inspired me. And one of the things that was in the book was play your aces. Don't play like a 2 or a 3, and then you're going to play the ace later. First of all, figure out what your aces are and play them. Don't hold back. And if you only have one ace, play it. And that got to me to the point where I decided, for me personally, my ace was comedy. So I needed to move away from music and move into the comedy field. And I felt like if I can't make this work, I got nothing else. I'm not really a salesman. I'm not an athlete. I'm not that great at business. It bores me, to be honest with you. But if I can make my comedy work, then that's my best shot.
It was almost like Perry Roseman, the great CBC producer of. Geez, what didn't he do? He was directing Air Farce and King of Kensington. And what did he used to say? Throw as long as you can, as hard as you can, and put the shiniest apples on top. Basically that was his way of saying the same thing, I think. Same
thing. Play your aces. Yep.
And Smith and Smith ran for a while. Was it, what was the next show? Was it Me and Max, or did you have anything that we might not have seen in the middle of that?
No, I think we went from Smith and Smith. We tried the Me and Max thing for a year. We wanted to try our hand at kind of a sitcom-y thing without any budget. That made it kind of interesting. And then by that point, Telefilm was up and running, and Telefilm. Somebody from Telefilm, I think the guy's name was Laurie Rotenberg. I could be wrong, but I think that was his name.
Name rings a bell.
Yeah, he called me and said, "You're exactly the kind of guy we should be supporting." So he says, "Come on in with a proposal, and let's work together." So I thought, okay, well that's great, because it's going to give me a lot more money to work with. Well, there were some strings attached from Telefilm. Like whatever proposal you brought in, it could not be what you were already doing, because they were afraid the broadcasters would just use it to subsidize productions they were already involved with. So, so I had to come up with something new that was, different than what I had some success with, and that's where Comedy Mill came from. So we had different writers, and it was a whole different feel to the show and everything. But we just said, well, this is what's required. Let's do it. And then we did that for a couple of years, and then ironically, I got fed up with all the forms you had to fill out, and it seemed to me I was more focused on getting funding than I was on getting an audience. And I think a lot of television producers are in that basket, to be honest with you. So anyway,
I hate it. I hate doing it. I hate filling out forms for Telefilm Canada, and I'm 40 and I hate it.
Yeah, no.
Just putting it out there.
No, I'm with you. And
it's important, but.
Yeah, I know. Well, some live or die on it. Like when they get the funding in their minds, it's like, okay, that's our success. Don't worry about the audience. We got the funding. So for me, when I finished Comedy Mill, it was like, I want to do something really simple. I don't want Telefilm anywhere near it. I want to be able to do it. I want to be able to produce a show based on the license fee only. No subsidy, no crap. And that was Red Green. I mean, we just did it on a shoestring. I mean, I had a crew of 5 people, including the actors, and away we'd go.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I mean, they all stuck, but that one particularly is stuck. How did Red Green come about? Because it's interesting how you mention building a concept around using the resources that you want to use. Resources, I should say. There's a very slight delay in my microphone, so it's making me look like I had a couple of beer.
Sorry.
So how did Red Green come about in terms of working within the constraints of just the license fees that you had? I'm really interested, both as a producer, to hear it, and I'm sure people would love to hear the story.
Well, when you go back to the Smith and Smith days, like I said, I was the goofy guy, and I would create these characters, and they would do a minute or two each episode, and I needed a new character. So I think I'm going to say 1978. There was Red Fisher had a TV show. It was like a fishing show, but sometimes he wouldn't even catch a fish, and he wrote poems, he'd recite his poetry and everything. And I thought, oh my God, this guy thought nothing would bore you. So I was really, in the early days, I was just making fun of Red Fisher, in my own way. But what happened was, first of all, that was just a caricature. That wasn't a character. And when we decided, like I said before, about doing something simple, and Rick Green, who's a friend of mine, and we've been writing together, we wanted to create this show and exaggerate men's foibles and everything. And so once that got started, and then we also geared the concept to the budget. I mean, you can do a fishing show cheap. You can set it in a kind of a grungy lodge and never change the settings. It's not elaborate. You don't need a lot of cameras and fancy stuff. And then I had to get a group of actors who wanted to do it. It wasn't enough that they wanted work. They wanted to do this show. They wanted to read the script and go, yeah, I want to do that, because I'm paying scale. It's not exciting. But what I do is I'd say, okay, I'm not going to pay you much per segment, but I'm going to guarantee you're going to get 8 segments in the season, and we're going to shoot them all in one day. So you didn't get much per segment, but it was a pretty good day, So that we made all that work.
Did you think that it would stick with people as much as it did?
Not a chance. I mean, not a chance. My wife, when she saw the first show, she sat there beside me. She never laughed. She never smiled. When it was all over, she turned to me and she said, "Oh, well."
Oh, man.
Yeah. And if you watch we did 300 episodes, and then there's a lodge meeting at the end of the episodes.
Yes.
And we do the man's prayer, right? I'm a man, but
I can change if I have to, I guess.
I guess. Well, in the 300th episode, if you ever see it, it says, "I'm a man, but I changed because I had to. Oh, well."
Is that a little nod to Morag?
Yeah, a 15-year inside joke.
Oh my God. It's funny that you mentioned that. You kind of already answered it. A good friend of mine, Kevin Basendowski, he is, I work with him with some of the Crime Stoppers stuff here in Regina, which is where I am now. And he was also my jiu-jitsu instructor, and he's a huge fan. So he's been blowing up my phone. He had a couple of questions, which I thought were really interesting. I'm probably going to have to introduce the cat because she won't shut up. So
I got a deer behind me. So.
Oh, there you go. Well, the deer's not alive anymore.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Oh.
So Kevin was asking me, he said, having worked professionally with my family, I was curious how working with your wife influenced your comedy. I'm going to give him 2.
Well, I mean, it's kept me on the straight and narrow, I would say that, but it also gave me a lot of material because, once you're married, then you can talk to married guys and they know what you're talking about. So very helpful. I don't take marriage advice from single guys or divorced guys. I don't want to do what they did. So it was a huge advantage. And my wife, she is the greatest. It hasn't all just been a huge rise of success here. We had our struggles in the way, and she would say to me, "You just decide what you want to do, and then we'll all figure out how to support you." So, I mean,
that's huge.
How do you beat that?
You can't. Huge. I don't think you can.
No.
Certainly not in my experience.
No.
The other question, it's not tons of questions, but I promised a few in my call that I thought these are actually pretty interesting questions. Kevin also says that he owes you probably royalties for if they can't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. He was wondering, where did that line come about?
Yeah, well, Rick Green and I, created the show, and our job was to make each other laugh. So we would write scripts and hand them over to each other, and the other guy would rewrite and so on. And we wanted to have a handyman corner, a handyman segment in the show because a lot of men are think of themselves as being handy and stuff.
Yes.
And I'm not exactly sure where that line came from, but it was either him or me, and it was a long, long time ago.
It's a great line, but there's so many great lines that everybody knows, and I've got two more questions which I thought were interesting. One I think I know the answer to, but I want to hear it from you. My other friend Sean, who is also one of my jiu-jitsu instructors, he says, "Is there anything that you can't fix with duct tape?"
Anything slimy, you can't put a Band-Aid on a snake with duct tape. So, but if it's dry, duct tape's here. Anyway, the beauty of duct tape is, first of all, you can fix something in an hour. You don't waste your whole Saturday, even if you have to fix it every Saturday for an hour. I would rather do that than waste a whole Saturday fixing something properly. And a repair job that outlives you just makes you regret your mortality.
I can't really argue with that. And you know what? When you can't get enough gaff tape and you're out, sometimes it'll have to do. In fact, like this light in front of me, which has been on many shows that have actually been broadcast on networks in Canada people have heard of. It actually has duct tape on it right now. And it wasn't just for this, because there's like a little friggin' connector on it that broke, and I haven't had time to replace it. So there's white duct tape on it right now.
We used to say on the show, this is only temporary unless it works.
And that leads me in. So duct tape is kind of an interesting thing. I can't really argue with the logic. How did you come up with that as the thing to use? I guess just the logic of it, and it almost became its own character enough that I think 3M sponsored you for a while.
Yeah, they 3M was involved with the show. That book that I mentioned earlier, where I play your aces and so on, also in that book was to help your brand, you need to connect with a known brand. If you can find some known brand that you can connect with, you'll be the beneficiary of that. So I brought everybody together one day. The PBS rep was in Toronto, and we were at CBC, and I had a book deal, and so they had the book publisher. There was a bunch, maybe 6 or 7 of us sitting around the table, and I said, I'm looking for something to attach the Red Green brand to, and I want to hear suggestions from everybody. And they would, somebody said, well, it's not as stupid as you think it is. That was their suggestion. And when the meeting was over, I didn't like anything I heard, but I cited duct tape. Duct tape is the brand I want to connect with, because if I can get people to associate Red Green with duct tape, every time they see a roll of duct tape or anything that's been repaired with duct tape, they'll think of Red Green. That would be a real boost. That would be a good thing to do. And it turned out to be right. So there's always
they still do.
Yeah, still do. I've heard people say we couldn't afford to fix it right, so we just Red Greened it. I've become a verb.
Yeah, you have. And one of the things that probably doesn't hurt, and I'm sure you already knew this, but so I grew up, like, I'm in Regina now, and this is where our facilities are for our shows and stuff. But I grew up in Ottawa and the Ottawa Valley. So I grew up in Lanark County, which is, may as well be a red-green set. And if you've been there, which I imagine you have, but you probably also know that's where 3M had a huge facility.
Yeah.
So that, I imagine that didn't hurt. It's funny because every rural area thinks that, oh, this is the inspiration for Red Green. It speaks to literally everyone.
Yeah, and people in America think that the show's done in Minnesota or the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They don't. It crosses the border seamlessly because there's people like Red Green everywhere in North America.
Yeah, there really are. And actually, for the Rod Peterson show, Joe McGinnis had a question. He said, "Corey, you have to ask Steve this. Did you keep the first piece of duct tape from your first show?"
No, I'm not. I got a dresser full of stuff, and people send me stuff, and I'm just not. I'm not. I don't lean that way. I don't. There's a reason your windshield is bigger than your rearview mirror. You're supposed to be looking forward.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and it also means that you have a much more manageable assortment of crap that you have to take charge of. So
yes.
Now, obviously, we know how big the Red Green Show came. So how did it come about to move things over, or not necessarily move things over, but to come to CBC? Because I was reading the Air Farce book years ago, and on the jacket, there is a quote from you that states that they never told you explicitly, but you had a hunch that, I don't know if it would have been Roger or Don or a couple of the Air Farce guys might have, you thought that they might have had something to do to help Red Green move over.
Absolutely. They absolutely did. And when I started doing the show, I wanted to go to CBC right away. I thought it was I thought it was a national show. It wasn't just a local show. And for 6 years, they kept saying no. And I mean, the head of CBC was a guy named Yvon Fetzan for a few of those years, and he would phone me at home.
I knew Yvon. I knew him when I was at CTV.
Well, there you go.
Great dude.
And he would phone me, and he would apologize that he just couldn't get his people to get behind it, And then years later, there was the program director was a guy named Slocko Klimkew. I think he was from Winnipeg. I always say he was conceived during a Scrabble game.
Yeah.
But he had 2 teenage sons, and he had taken them to a Jumbo Video to rent some movies. And when they came to the front counter, one of his sons had one of my specials. And he's like, what the heck? This is my sons want to watch a Canadian show that's not on CBC. And so next thing you know,
we can't have this.
We can't have this. So and then we went to CBC and stayed there for 9 years. And even then, I decided it was time to end the show. And after our 13th season, and we'd always meet Slocko in Las Vegas at a convention.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I know you can do whatever you want to do, but here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to do two more years. And I said, that would be 300 episodes, 15 seasons. And about a month later, I would turn 60. I know an exit ramp when I see one. So he said, well, I tell you what, let's write that up. And he gave me a 2-year contract, which in my world, that just never happened. So what it allowed me to do.
No, it's huge.
All the cast and all the crew and everybody, we got 2 years. So I can wrap up storylines. I can do it, and just have a real closure to it rather than, well, sorry, gang, we didn't get picked up,
That's crazy. Did it take long for the deal with CBC to come into focus once he got in touch with you?
No. And you know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. This is I don't think I've ever told this story. At that point, my brother was he's a business guy. He was managing the business side of things. So Comedy Network had just started recently, had just come into being, and they wanted the Red Green catalog, but we were talking, well, why don't you produce this, take on the new shows and you can get the inventory along with it.
Yeah.
And so we're talking to CBC and we're talking to CTV. So, and Yvon Fetzan at this point is at CTV. Anyway, so we're in the office.
He's a smart dude.
Yeah. My brother gets a phone call and it's CTV making us an offer. So he says, okay, thank you. I'll get back to you. He hangs up. He says to me, where would you rather be? I said, I'd rather be on CBC. So he phoned CBC and he says, I just got off the phone with CTV who made me an offer. What should I tell them? How's that?
That was smart. And with 300 episodes, that's more than enough for strip syndication.
Oh, yeah.
You only need 100 for that. You can run it forever in
we had
infinite rotation.
We had 144 at that time. So
okay.
The 156 that came after were all on CBC.
Oh yeah. So it's huge, but even so, you were to
Oh, I know.
been well over the
Yeah.
100 episode threshold for Strip.
Absolutely.
Once you get there, you can run it. And PBS also ran it for a good long time too. How'd that come about? I'm actually kind of curious.
Yeah, well, we went down knocking on doors all over America and ended up at NatP with there was a distributor called Hearst Entertainment at that time.
Yep. Yeah.
And one of their salesmen thought this might work on PBS, and he got a Detroit station to pick it up because the Detroit PBS station comes into Canada, so they thought Canadians would probably support, i.e., pledge money
Right.
to support a Canadian show. So we started. I think we had five PBS stations in syndication, and then we got up to about 120 at our peak. But what that did was really establish the brand in the U.S. People and our audience are not normal, PBS viewers. So the fact that we could get an audience through PBS encouraged us that, let's just stay with it. And here we are, like I say, 20 years after we stopped doing the show, we're still finding new people that have that weird sense of humor that we do.
Well, the other thing is, somebody posted them on YouTube. I don't know if they were supposed to, but some of the PBS drives, the little interstitials that you did, well, and some of them were like hour long. They were hysterical. Those were like a show in and of themselves.
Yeah, our point was they have intellectual programming. I pitched this to PBS. You have intellectual programming, and you need to get people to pay for something they can get for free. That's not an intellectual decision. That's an emotional decision.
I agree.
Now you're trying to get people to make an emotional decision based on an intellectual program. That doesn't work. That's why you bring, the Eagles in, or Peter, Paul, and Mary, or something they have an emotional attachment to. So I said, people that watch the Ray Green Show have an emotional attachment to it. So let's combine them. Let's make it, I called it pledge-otainment. So the pledging and the entertainment was all mixed in together. I would say to people, if you like the show, send in a little bit of money so they can keep it on the air. If you don't like the show, send in a lot of money so they can afford to buy something better.
PBS seems to do really well, particularly when they are able to poke fun at themselves, and CBC too. Like when there was a joke made that the Air Farce would make, even on some of the like Arthur, with a cartoon in the 90s, they made a couple of jokes, PBS jokes, and it really goes over well. And the thing is a lot of people grew up on it too. Right?
Absolutely. Sesame Street.
Sesame Street. I grew up watching. Well, it's funny. I grew up watching way too much because I grew up in Ottawa. We didn't move, like we moved to the Valley when I was about 7 or 8. So, but I was a Ottawa kid. So I was watching Canadian Sesame Street on CBC and Fred Penner and all of that. And
Sharon Lois and Bram.
Sharon Lois and Bram, absolutely. Yeah. And I was more of an Eric Nagler guy. In fact, he was the first guest we got on the show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Eric Nagler was the first. I couldn't believe how many people said yes. I mean, I went through my Rolodex a little bit. It's like, okay, well, I worked in television for a little bit, maybe 20 years now. I don't know where the hell the time goes. So I knew a couple of people that I could say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this for fun. But I don't think anybody has said no. I was fully expecting more. I used to, Canadian Sesame Street, the American Sesame Street, because we got the Watertown feed, because it would go right in Ottawa.
New York. Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was thinking WAPI or XPI. I can't remember the call letters. And then I would watch all the French programming. Rabbit Ears. So if you didn't have any money, you just get it on Rabbit Ears. Everybody grew up with it.
Yeah, you still can. You can get high def on Rabbit Ears.
Absolutely, you can. Yeah, and the picture quality is huge.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then you would have that just for syndication.
Right.
So SNS Productions. I mean, you would have had to have set up a production company for all of that, and you were doing a bunch of other shows too. Like you were doing some CBC and other stuff. Also, you guys got pretty big.
Yeah, we did. I think we had like 75 people working there at one point.
Yeah.
My brother came on board in the mid 90s and really, he turned it into a business. He said to me, this is not going to work unless you take less money than you're making, so whatever money. So I've got some capital to work with expand and so on.
Right.
And I said, sure, I'm fine with that. I was happy. And so then away he went. And so he's a good salesman. He's a great businessman and a good manager. And, he really grew that thing up to the point that it expanded beyond my wildest dreams.
And the merchandise and the books, was that your brother's idea, or were people calling and screaming? I mean, to me, just from a branding point of view and from my evil TV producer point of view, a lot of the stuff seemed tailor-made for merchandise, even if it wasn't designed for it. It was just screaming for stuff to want to have and wear, or just because it's fun. How did the merchandising and all that stuff come about for it?
Well, when you go on PBS, you've got to have merchandise,
That makes sense.
Most of them just have, videos of their programming, but we had a lodge, and, we had some attitudes that could be reflected in merchandise. And so we were kind of a natural. Even when I was touring, we would have merchandise, and there's not very many stand-up comics or one-man shows that have merchandise that's not just the show that you just saw, So PBS forced us into it, and
blame PBS. It's all their fault.
Yeah, it's all their fault. But it turned out it was, it's been good.
Well, all the stuff on the site is selling out. Actually, the funny thing is, you were online pretty early on as well. I don't know when redgreen.com went online, but I seem to recall that you had an online presence, if not like 99, 2000, pretty early on. I was finishing up high school, and you guys had a website.
That was I have two sons. One of them I do the podcast with, and the other one, he's the online guy, and he's involved with animation and so on. So he was the driver behind the website and also the online store and so on. So he got all those things rolling.
And very early on. I'm guessing he's about my age, because I just turned 40.
Yeah, no, he's 48.
48? Okay, so he was a little older, but still within that. He would have been probably, I guess, in his 20s, I guess, around that time, or 30s or something. But still, not a lot of people are going, let's set up a website. There were not many people doing it. That was very, very innovative.
The fans wanted it. The fans insisted on it. I didn't know this show was working until it was canceled. When it was canceled at the end of its second year, and I'm getting these letters from Canadians just saying, hey man, do whatever you got to do. You got to keep this show on the air. I mean, it was heartwarming, and it really emboldened me. It was like my wife saying, you decide what you want to do and we'll support you. These were the fans saying, you've got something going here, stick with it. And I did.
What did she think, just because she's clearly has a producer's brain and was very clearly and is a producer, even though the initial sensibility might not have been her cup of tea, what were her thoughts as a producer overall when the show really kind of hit? Did she ever express any sentiment?
I've done maybe three smart things in my life, and one of them is maybe the first two was marrying her, and then the third one was once we got the fan mail started coming in. That's when we decided to form a lodge and have people be able to join and everything. Mm-hmm. And all the mail that came in, I put her in charge of it. So she would respond to the mail, but mainly she'd have to read it first. And when she read how much this show meant to people, then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I'm kind of proud of what we're doing here. We're making people's lives better. It's a nice thing,
And on top of that, she has the producer's brain. So it's like, okay, this is working.
Yeah,
this is really working. and it's really apparent that it's working now. I figured that it would be something like that because, I mean, you can't argue with success. Well, I mean, you can, but it's generally not a good idea.
No. It's hard to find a listener.
Yeah, well, and it's also interesting the characters that you ended up coming up with. I haven't had the chance to speak with Rick Green yet. I have spoken to Paul Chatto. Well, he's been trying to convince Rick to do it, and that was fun. He was one of the first, and we were talking about writing and stuff. How did you decide on the characters and the final roster of characters? Because they changed quite a bit from the first CHCH season. Like you had the police officer character. I can't remember his character's name. And there was like the Skinflint busybody. And I think the only one I remember from early on, besides Harold, was maybe Dalton. And then they got whittled. How did the original characters come about? I suppose their origins, if there is something, because sometimes it's like, oh, that just works. Put them in. We'll write it around somebody. And then how did you end up deciding on the final roster of characters as it evolved?
Okay, so first of all, I'll answer the first question first. There isn't a huge talent pool in Canada. It's big, but it's not huge. In America, you can write any character you want, and you'll find 100 people who could perform it. Not in Canada. So rather than create characters and then try to find an actor that could do them, what we would do is we'd bring an actor that we wanted to work with, like Peter Callahan, for example.
Yeah,
I'd worked with Peter before. I wanted to work with him on the Red Green Show. So Rick and I brought him in, and we just asked him about his life, what hobbies he does, and so on and so on. And it became clear that Peter's a very trustworthy, loyal kind of a guy. You could tell by his life experiences. So we said, okay, thanks. And he said, well, aren't I going to do like an audition? And I said, no. We got the job. You got the job. We're just trying to figure out what we're going to do with you. So what we did was we said, okay, he's gone. Let's take his loyalty and let's make it a problem. Let's make him, he is the most loyal person. That's a forest ranger. That guy's been sitting up there in that tower for 30, 40 years without being paid. And that's a compliment to him, you know? so that's how we did all the characters. We just would
That's brilliant.
And then we would expand what their natural tendencies were. And then what was the other question was about why changed, you know, the characters changed and some left. And
how'd you decide on the end?
My absolute core is a writer, not a performer. I perform so somebody will do my writing, and I produce so that I can get work as a performer. But the core is the writing. So I have to have characters that I feel excited about writing the next script for. And some of them, you know, after 6 scripts or 10 scripts, I'm done. I got nothing more to say through that character. And so they go away. But other ones, and generally what I found was really good actors like Bob Bainborough, Peter Callahan, Wayne Robson. I never ran out of energy to write for those characters because as I'm writing, and even with the podcast now, Peter and Bob are still involved with that. As I'm writing these scripts, I can hear their voices and I can't wait to record them.
It's hard not to kind of hear if you know something is going to be for that. I think anybody would hear it in their voices at this point.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
That's just because they're so everybody knows them. And it was interesting seeing Jeff Lumby because it was like, I feel like I remember him as a kid when I was watching Size Small, and I was like, and sure enough, you know,
he was a morning DJ guy in Hamilton here, and that's how he and I he was just here last week recording. He lives in France now.
Oh yeah,
and he's part of the podcast, and normally he records his stuff in France, and we record it and send it to him, and he adds his part, and we put it back, and then my son puts it all together. But this year he actually flew in and we recorded right here, right where I'm sitting.
Oh, that's fantastic. And radio is a different beast, man. It's tough to fill. Like, it's all tough, but it's a different kind of tough. And I always respected radio guys that were able to just build things up. And it's been a while since I've been. It's been a while since I've been to CHCH. I think the last time that I was at CHCH was 2015, maybe 2016.
Oh, wow.
I was doing like a morning show or something. I don't know if that was before Channel Zero bought them or after, but it's been a while.
They had their 70th anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah. So I heard. It's crazy. Are you still in Hamilton?
Yeah, I'm in Hamilton right now. Got an old house here. Our house is 160 years old or something like that. And CH is not there anymore. It's moved up to Clapperson Corners, Waterdown area.
I heard they were going to move or something, but I never kept on top after moving out here.
I guess they sold the property and the building's torn down. And,
it's probably worth quite a bit. And they put condos on it or something.
Yeah, it's right downtown. So, yeah.
So interesting that you mentioned that, you've got the nice, is it like a rural property or you in the city?
I live right downtown. It's just, yeah.
Oh, nice. There are some nice houses there. There's a lot of history in Hamilton. And people go, oh, Hamilton, whatever. Where did you film the outdoor bits? Somebody was asking me about that. Where did he film the outdoor bits?
Well, there was a guy named Don Nash had a farm up on top of the mountain in Stony Creek, and he had sold the property. He sold the farm to a developer, but part of the deal was the developer couldn't do anything until after he and his wife were both gone. So he had a farm that he wasn't farming, and he was just, would like to have something going on. And so we would come there and shoot every day. And because he had so much property, there was a bush and there was a hill and there was rocks and and there was a barn, anything we needed, and there were sheds, we could find in that place. So we did a lot of the outdoor shooting there. Camp Brebeuf was a camp that was connected to the Catholic Church in town. Yeah. And we did a lot of work there. And, they didn't charge us. They would take a donation though. I never could see the difference, but apparently there was.
Maybe it's a tax thing. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that was it. Anyway, yeah, once the show got established too, people were happy to have us there. They'd come and watch whatever the heck we were shooting. They could never believe that it was just like 3 or 4 people with our whole crew.
It's funny if you do it well, that's all you need. I mean. So all this, Emily, who's my producer here, who produces a lot of our sports programming, she had a question because she's a huge fan. She said, where did you get all the cars from? Like just to be able to tape from week to week to week to week. Where did you get all the scrap stuff from? Like the endless supply of crazy stuff you had?
Yeah, well, there was one of our crew, had a garage where they repaired cars, and they had a contract with the police that whenever there was an accident, the cars were towed to their spot. They had a big property,
right? Until
the insurance adjuster could come and look at them and decide whether they're going to get the car fixed, or if there was more damage to the car than what the car was worth, they'd write it off. Well, with a K car, if there's more than $50 damage, they write it off. So we had an unlimited supply of K cars. So we would have these production meetings, and I would say, and I do these really crude drawings. This is what I want to do. I want to have a car with 4-wheel steering. So I need to take 2 front-wheel drive cars and weld them, the 2 front halves together. And while you're at it, weld the 2 back halves together so I get a trailer out of it and everything. And they would go away and their goal was always to come back with something that was better than what I expected. And they never, ever let me down. There was one where we turned a Cadillac into a backhoe.
I remember that one.
Yeah. So the power windows would do some of the operation, and the sunroof, when you slid the sunroof back, that would work the scoop. Well, I didn't realize it, but Cadillacs, the year of Cadillac we're using, they didn't have a sunroof. So the first thing they had to do was put a sunroof into this old Cadillac. Then they could do the bit.
There's a few that's I remember that one. I remember those two.
Yeah.
And I remember the car boat, the submersible. I remember the barbecue.
Oh yeah.
And I remember the pop bottle boat, which actually my brother and I wanted to see if we could actually make a boat like that out of pop bottles. And my granddad was an engineer, and we actually did. Yeah. It worked. Some of the stuff actually worked.
Yeah, it works a little bit for a little while.
For a little while. Eventually it starts to, get a little lower and a little lower. And,
Yeah, when we were doing that season, we were shooting in London at CFPL.
Yeah.
And the crew was staying at the Holiday Inn. So when we finished the bit, they took the boat back, put it in the pool at the Holiday
Inn. That's great. Yeah. That's hilarious. And CFPL, they're still there, I think. It was like the CTV. That was a CTV station, or was it the CBC station?
No, it was Bayton, but it's so CTV.
Oh yeah, so like BBS or whatever, the Bayton Broadcasting System.
Bayton, yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy. So, did you end up syndicating it, like OTA, like for in the US at all? Because you had so many episodes. Were you able to, or did you ever bother? I guess you probably wouldn't have needed to.
We were with PBS for so long, and then about I want to say 3 years ago, this company called Answer Media out of Kansas approached us. They wanted to do digital streaming and so on.
Yeah.
And so we said, yeah, sure. I don't know. My sons had to do something technically to make it work. But anyway, that's been very successful. And that's where all the merchandise you see now and everything that's developing now is based on the success of that streaming. I'm going to cough. There, I'm finished.
No worries. I've done that plenty of times myself. Actually, it sort of jogged my memory. The animated segments, because I know you were talking about one of your sons was into the animation side of things.
Yeah.
How did the animation stuff come about? Because it was actually fairly nicely done. Was the Sheridan student. I went to.
Oh.
So I used to be an animator of the flip the paper, back when there were still those of us around in ye old days doing that. And I remember seeing those segments. It's like, this kind of animation is not cheap. And it didn't look too bad, all things considered. And you had one almost every episode for Ranger Gord. How did that come about?
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think it was just the evolution of, we'd done a lot of scenes with Ranger Gord, and we thought that'd be a neat little trick that he's so bored and so much time on his hands that he's been able to figure out how to make little cartoons and so on. And it was connected with I think it was a Sheridan student named Bryce Hallett who came to us. And it's funny, he had drawn a cartoon strip out of, he'd taken some of my lines from a monologue or something I'd done and made it a little three panel cartoon strip. And we sent it to United Media in New York because they were doing the Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown was their big thing.
Yeah.
And they came back and said they didn't like the drawings, but they liked the writing. So I ended up with a newspaper column in 275 newspapers for
get out.
Yeah.
That's nothing to sniff at. So they basically were syndicating a column too.
Yeah. So that lasted a while, and then but the animation we're doing now is my son was involved with he's got a partner who's an animator, and they have a way of doing it that's more, let's say, more efficient, kind of like the way I did the Red Green show. They can do animation, and it doesn't cost a fortune. But it's only one guy doing, so he's slow. Like we do 6 episodes a year, but he knows where the funny is, and that's what I like. I don't give him a lot of notes, hardly anything. He knows when to take a certain look or turn away or whatever. So
amortized over course of series, magic words for budget.
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
And how did people react to them? I imagine people liked them because if they didn't, you wouldn't have kept doing it.
Well, right now they're behind a paywall on our, again, this company out of Kansas is managing the whole thing.
Right.
But if you're a lodge member, you get to see the animated series. Right now, that's the only access to it. I'm hands off. Do whatever you want. Whatever you're doing is working, so I'm not going to stick.
I haven't seen the new ones yet. I haven't seen the ones behind the paywall. I only remember seeing the little segments that ran on the Red Green Show with Ranger Gord. So I haven't actually seen these yet, but I'll have to
send you. I'll send you a little promo, and then you'll see it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So I guess the big question is, so what's next for you? And you've also written a bunch of books too. Like, you're still very much in demand. If you wanted to retire, I don't think you're going to be able to.
Well, I'm not, when I retire, it'll be to lie down forever, because as long as my mind is working, if I'm not creating, I'm just not very happy. And I'm not good at exploring the world. I'm more interested in creating what's not there than discovering what is. So I had a meeting with my sons this spring, and I said, well, here's what I want to do. I want to do 3 more years of the podcast, and I want to commit to that. And I'm writing them, and if I have that to look forward to, then that'll get me through the next 3 years, and then I'll make a decision. Maybe I'll keep going. I don't know. I don't want to assume that I'm going to live forever. But on the other hand, like I say, if my mind is functioning, then it gives me pleasure to write, and I still occasionally think of something that I find humorous. And I did actually retire in 2006. I retired for a couple of years, and what I was doing, I was really annoying my friends, because anything I would think of, I would tell them, and we need an audience to share this with. You're driving us all crazy. So that's when I started writing books and touring and so on.
So are there any projects that you really, really want to do that you haven't had the chance to do yet, but is sort of on the, I got to get this done? Anything that's sort of been bouncing around that you want to do?
Well, I'm very lucky in that whatever I think of, I have several avenues to express it through. I've got all the characters that I write for. I've got myself, for starters, and I have the platform of the podcast and also the animated series. So there's really no excuse for me. If I have something that I want to share, I have unlimited access. And it's so great now that I don't have to work with a broadcaster. I don't have to go to some gatekeeper, some person who has a completely different set of values than I do, deciding whether or not my sense of humor is marketable. That's very frustrating.
Yes, it is. This is one of the nice things about digital, because, we still do linear television as well. But
yeah,
I remember I was always a fan of Sugar on YTV when I was a kid. And I was quite tickled when she was playing the executive. I think that was Sugar that was playing the executive character.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then when I had worked in television for a while, those segments became both 100 times funnier and 100 times more angering. And I was going, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think I know where it came from.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess before we go, is there anything that you want anybody watching to know? Obviously we want to push them to redgreen.com. Is there anything they should know about? And I'll make sure that we plug it here, and we want people going and getting the stuff.
The only thing probably the biggest surprise to me, and I found this when I was touring, was, it sounds like a cliche, but it's only a rerun if you've seen it, and there are young people today that are seeing the Red Green Show for the first time and really enjoying it, and they don't care that it was produced 30 years ago. So
it's funny.
That's the thing I would say. It's funny, and just because it's old doesn't mean it should be discarded. And I probably should include myself in that same bracket.
Well, we'll make sure that we push that, because I think that's another point that you raised. It's just having new audiences for things. It's not a rerun if you haven't seen it.
Right.
So and I've had the good fortune to be able to introduce the show to people. When I go and I work with people in different countries, and then they laugh their head off because they're not Canadian and they don't live here and they haven't seen it, or they're not American. They just love it. It's nice to be able to see the reaction of somebody that doesn't really know what they're in for.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'll do is let me do just a quick outro, and I'll come back with you. But thanks so much for joining me today, Steve. This is a huge bucket list thing. I think all of us in Canada are really this is really fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. That is the legendary Steve Smith, who is very kind to show up on our little show here, Slightly Ways North. You should head over to redgreen.com, and if you haven't seen the show, you should. You can see it for free online on YouTube, and there is a Roku Fast channel. And and if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. Hugely important. We don't ask a whole lot here on Slightly Ways North, but that is something that we will ask. And so that's it for today. So hope you have a great one. And there's a reason that I'm better behind the camera in front, but all this stuff is absolutely fantastic. So random and graphic. Apparently we all have a day job here, which is doing television shows that run in television places. Have a good one, everybody.